So, the spoilers are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 408, and let's just say that we're going to be getting a lot more information about All For One, his backstory, his background, and what actually happened to his younger brother. And we will be getting into that, but first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do and cover the spoilers for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 408. And as I said earlier, from what we're getting with the spoilers so far, we are still going to be focused in the flashback of All For One, and more specifically from what we're seeing continuing on from what we got in 407, as well as potentially expanding a little bit more on the flashback itself, and potentially eventually cutting back over to the present timeline for why this is going to be important, most likely. So let's just dive right into the spoilers and really see what's going to be going on in Chapter 408. And to start off, the title of the chapter is Chapter 408, Eyes Full of Determination, and the chapter begins with All For One killing Yoichi in a sewer. His body falls apart, only one hand is left behind. It's revealed that All For One gave him this name because his brother was the first thing he received in this world. Yoichi contains the kanji for give and first. The second page focuses on All For One and Kudo's eyes. While Kudo's eyes are full of emotion and start to get filled with tears, forming a reflection of the man who killed Yoichi, All For One's eyes are entirely white, with no reflection at all. Kudo still didn't have the scar. The narrator says that Yoichi was killed 2 months after escaping with Kudo and the third user. And let's just start off with here, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that you can take from this part of the text spoilers. For instance, we get a little bit of confirmation of the timeline and the time frame between where All For One and his little brother met up and the moment that he was killed, and the time that actually Kudo actually rescued Yoichi from All For One's clutches. And it gives a little bit more context and recontextualizes what we knew prior about what potentially All For One did and whether or not he actually killed his younger brother. And that the time is a little bit worse for All For One when it comes to the idea that this was done in a crime of passion, and that this was something that was premeditated most likely than not, as we see that they are able to do this action with no type of emotion in their eyes. So that just really shows how much of a potential psychopath or sociopath or monster that All For One is, being able to kill his brother in cold blood. But we actually are going to get a little bit more in the text bullets that while we do not see a very much visceral reaction from All For One, that he is still reflecting on that moment even multiple times past since the actual action occurred. Because the next line of text spoilers say that some time passes and All For One is in an apartment in a very tall building looking at Yoichi's hand. It looks like the ones Shigaraki has, and saying that the quirk he gave his brother was no longer in his body, and that this has never happened before. He starts thinking about what could have happened until he finally realizes that the quirk may have been passed on to someone else. Meanwhile, the third user, whose name is revealed to be Bruce, is examining Kudo's body. Kudo was feeling weird, and Bruce asked if he was touched by All For One during the battle, but Kudo tells him to reveal the results already. It appears that there are now 2 quirk factors inside of Kudo, the gear shift one and the very small, almost insignificant one. The next page is very interesting. It shows 2 different versions, quote unquote, of Yoichi. One says, "I couldn't stop my brother. He only sees people as toys." And the other says, "My brother kept me alive. If only he cared more about other people." And this is a interesting development. As I said earlier, it seems as if All For One does have some lingering emotions or feelings towards what happened to his little brother, due to the fact that he still has his little brother's hand, and came to the conclusion that his quirk that he gave to his little brother was eventually passed on in some way or fashion, as well as tying into some more information about the second and the third user, where we finally get both of their names, of the third user being Bruce, which sounds very much an American name to me. But we're also getting a little bit more information diving into the quirk of One For All itself, and how it can be seen as a part of the quirk factor inside of an individual, but also that apparently with inside of this quirk factor of One For All, at one moment in time, there were two sides of Yoichi. One that was more sympathetic for the plight of his own older brother and thinking that he could change, versus another side of him which understands the monster that his brother is potentially, and the horrible actions that have occurred in his name and what he wanted to do. So it's cool to see that there is a little bit more we can learn about One For All, and hopefully we'll be learning a little bit more of it in the flashback, if not after this flashback has concluded. And from there, we get the next part of the text spoilers that continues that conversation by saying that if only he cared about other people, the power to give and take could have been the kindest in the whole world. Kudo and All For One then come to a similar conclusion. Kudo says, Yoichi will now live within me, while All For One says, that means he still exists. We then see a double-page spread showing the next few decades of All For One's life. Him killing Kudo and Bruce, starting a cult, meeting the Doctor, trying to steal One For All from Banjo and failing, cutting in half, killing Nana, and having his face destroyed by All Might. But right after All For One was defeated by All Might for the first time, the Doctor stole his body from the morgue. Back to the present, All For One wonders if Bakugo is Kudo's descendant, but that would be impossible. He killed his family and all the women and children who were close to him. Besides, if Kudo and Bakugo are related by blood, All For One would have noticed it in Kamino. Then it finally clicks. It's the eyes. Unlike back in Kamino, Bakugo's eyes right now show his determination to defeat All For One, just like Kudo. And this is also something a little bit more interesting that we didn't know. The implication is more or less that All For One is going after One For All because his brother resides in the quirk and believes that he still lives on within it. And what is even more interesting is that we are going to potentially get in this chapter the little bit more timeline of events that we didn't get to see before, specifically involving All For One fighting the previous users of One For All, and even the implication that maybe All For One did die, but his body was resurrected by the Doctor as it was stolen from the morgue. And how we're cutting back to the present of All For One beginning to realize that if this character, Bakugo, is related to the person that he hates the most, Kudo, then why he didn't notice it earlier, and it's because he's finally noticing the eyes. The determination inside of Bakugo's eyes being the same as the determination inside of Kudo's eyes. Which means that he isn't necessarily related to Kudo in reference to Bakugo via blood, but via their determination and will, most likely. So it's going to be very interesting to see how All For One is going to just try and cope with the idea that this character may not be related to the person that he hates the most when it comes to blood, but ideals. And getting into the final part of the text spoilers, we have All For One saying that he can't keep fighting and getting even younger because he still needs to be able to fight when he gets to Shigaraki, knowing he'll struggle. That's when he decides to clear both his goals of killing Bakugo and getting to Tomura by using all of his quirks at once. Yoichi's vestige senses that something's coming, and what follows is probably the most impressive double-page spread Horikoshi has ever drawn. All For One is using all kinds of power, with several heads coming out of his body as he says, release every quirk factor, all for one goal. Edshot realizes that All For One's plan is to use all that volume of energy to propel himself forward at an unbelievable speed. and All Might notices that doing so will revert him back to baby form, which means this is All for One's final gamble. Bakugo looks at the monstrous thing in front of him and smiling says, "Are you stupid? There's no way this dumb thing will win." End of chapter. And from what we're getting with this part and the final part of the text spoilers, we're going to be getting something that looks amazing. Of All for One finally going full throttle with all of his quirks just so that he has the modicum of a chance of potentially achieving 2 goals with one huge monstrous stone. And hopefully we're going to be getting a little bit more with the actual images when they are more properly translated, as well as like scanned to be of a higher quality, to really see the impact of how much this double page spread is going to be within the chapter. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for the spoilers for right now. This is going to be most likely a little bit more of a girthier chapter when it comes to the content of it, but not as big and bombastic and as like numerous as we've gotten with the previous chapters. We may be getting like maybe at most 13 pages, but it could be upwards of 15 or 17 if we are lucky. But yeah, this is all I really have to say on the topic for right now. And let me ask you this. What did you think of the spoilers? Did you like them? Did you dislike them? And were you okay with the backstory that we got for All for One? Leave your thoughts down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz. And hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!